Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Facts and Fatherhood. I am your host, Demetrius. And listen, as I always say, I am so glad to be able to spend this time with you. Listen, we always talk about this on every single episode that my goal is to make sure that there are other fathers who love being fathers the way that I love being a father. It's possible. It's one of the things that I've seen, heard, read, and I even have a t-shirt that says this about fatherhood, is that fatherhood is the toughest job you will ever love. Tough job, but it is a lovable and it is a doable job. And we're here to just see if we can help provide tools, help just provide encouragement, inspiration, motivation in your job duty of fulfilling the role of being someone's dad. There is so much going on in this world, and there are so many things that are pulling at us and bringing us in all different types of directions. But the reality is, with some support, with some help, with some encouragement, and with some sheer grit and determination, we can be successful and we can do the job as fathers. Listen, I want you to continue to take this journey with me. So if this is your first time, do me a favor. Subscribe. All right. I need you to subscribe. I need you to hit the notification bell. And I need you to make sure that you are aware every time we have a new episode. Okay. I want you to make sure that you're on and that you are part of what we have going on in this journey. Our podcast, it is all over on different platforms, but our main space where we are actually showing these episodes is actually on Kingdom Purpose TV. It comes on every single Saturday, okay? Every single Saturday at 12 noon on the East Coast, which would be 12 p.m. on the East Coast. It's 12 noon, and that's 11 a.m. Central Time. And then it means when she get over there to the West Coast over there, that means that's going to be like 9 a.m. All right. So whatever time zone you're in, wherever you are in the world, you actually have an opportunity to be able to listen and watch our podcast. Plus, you can go to Facebook, you can go to YouTube, and you can find us there, and you can go and dig into some of the other episodes that we've had. We've had some wonderful conversations and some wonderful talks, and there's just so much available to you. We just really wanted to be able to provide some really good things for you in this particular space, talking and discussing fatherhood. I want you to remember, don't forget, keep it in mind. Very soon, you're going to hear an announcement about the release of this wonderful tool. This is a book that I've had the opportunity to be working on. A lot of it is based on my experience with raising my children. I'm no guru. I'm no clinically trained expert. But hey, I have had I have a doctorate, maybe multiple doctorates from the University of LIFE. And I'm telling you, that has taught me some wonderful things that I feel like were very beneficial and helpful to others. And so it's going to be packed into this book. You want to read the stories, you want to get the principles, and you want to learn what is there available for you to be able to grow and developing your job, your responsibility as fathers, just as parents in general. And then, y'all, I want you to go over to the website. I want you to go over to the www.factsandfathers.com website, and I want you to go out there and check out the resources that are available. There's a fatherhood journal that's over there. There's so many different things that's over there. There's even some merchandise that's over there. I'll tell you a little bit about that merchandise. The merchandise, it features some of it features these little sayings. I did some of the merchandise to dedicate it to my dad, who's passed on. He's gone on now. But in honor of my dad, I actually put some of his little statements and sayings he used to make on some of these shirts and hoodies and stuff like that. And one of my favorites, all-time favorites, is a statement that he would make where he would kind of put his head down like this and look over his glasses, and he'd say, "Boy, don't let the devil fool you." So there's some merchandise over there that actually says that don't let the devil fool you. This because he will if you allow him that opportunity. So you can go over there, check that out. There's some coffee mugs, all that kind of stuff like that. Go see, go see. Plus, there's some blogs on there. It's so many different tools that are over there. So go over there to www.factsandfathers.com and check out that website and get you some cool, stylish, quality merchandise. By the way, all right. All right, get your hands on some of that. All right. Well, today is another opportunity for us to have a very, very insightful, engaging, encouraging, enlightening, uplifting conversation. And today, my guest, his name is Travis Murray. He is the host of the Man in Progress podcast. And he talks about forging manhood. Wow, what a good word to describe talking about manhood, forging manhood. And his goal through his podcast is to help men build real values that we can live every day. And so that's the basis of what he does. I want to give him the space and the opportunity and the time to really talk to you a little bit more about who he is and what he does. So if you all will just do me a wonderful favor and welcome to our podcast today, Mr. Travis Murray. Man, welcome in. Thank you so much for being a part. Amen. Thank you so much for being a part and joining us today on our podcast. How are you, man?
Oh, I am fantastic. And thank you so much, Pastor, for having me on the show.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad to be able to sit down with you, have this conversation, and talk through some of these things, and talk about what you do, and share that with our listening audience, and see how we can help somebody through this conversation. Perhaps maybe it's going to be a starting point. Maybe you're been in the process and feeling a little bit discouraged and trying to figure some things out. Hopefully you'll be able to walk away from this conversation with some tools, some things that's going to help you, some strategies that's going to be able to help you to develop as a man. One of the things that was very, very important to me in my development as a father was I learned that the better I develop as a man, the man, whatever he's doing, he will be the better version of whatever that is that he's doing because he himself is whole and better as a man. So self-development was very, very vital, still is very, very vital and important to me because there's always room for improvement. One of the things we say on the podcast quite often is that I am a good man doing the best I can, but I'm working to make my best better. And all I want to do, all I want to compete with, the only person I want to compete with is the person that I was yesterday. And if I can be better today than I was yesterday, I feel like I'm doing something great. So again, welcome to the Facts and Fatherhood podcast, Travis. Man, tell us a little bit more about you. I'm excited for the listening audience to hear your story and hear more about what you do.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background from me. I kind of grew up in like a broken home with, a stepfather and a mother who worked a lot, and so there wasn't a lot for me to do being a middle child. We are the forgotten ones, if you will. And so, I kind of had to make my way through life kind of um, off the backbone of my older brother and leading my little brother to a better way. So for me, I grew up taking jobs wherever I could and just kind of piecing together what life I had until I had my kids. Once I had them, things kind of just switched. Like I knew that I had to provide. I knew that I had to be somebody better than the person I was. And I learned a saying that really got me through a lot of that, which was no more Monday than you did the previous Monday, right? So in that sense, compete with yourself to be better than the you were yesterday. So I resonate with that quite a bit, and I love that saying. So for me, it came to a point in my career where I realized I was taking jobs to take jobs and not really finding a career that really suited myself. So I started to turn inward instead of looking outward for something better. I started to turn inward because I thought maybe there was something there that I was missing. And God made all of us and he made us with the tools that we need to have a good life. Well, where do you find those tools? Well, I thought inward, inside, in my own head, in my own chest. And so I started to really look at that. And I got on with this coach a while back, and he told me, well, he asked me, what values do you have? And I wrote down some generic stuff, just trying to make fill the space because I didn't want to come up with nothing. And he looked me dead in my eyes. We're on camera, but I felt like this man was looking me dead in my eyes. And he's just like, he called me out. He's like, these are so generic. I need you to dig deeper. I really need you to find something here. So I did. I spent weeks, months just digging through values to see where they went. And I not just surface level, like, oh, I want to be more honest. Well, what does honesty mean? So I dug deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until I found the values that highlight me, which is fatherhood, family, honesty, integrity, and honor. And those are the five key fundamentals that I really resonate with, that I really drive for my own success. And so I started Man in Progress, not as a podcast, actually, if you will. It was my own journal. I wrote down, I'm a man in progress and I'm just forging manhood. And that became the title of my show because it has a forged theme where a blacksmith takes a piece of metal, you take yourself, you take your values, and you heat it, you hammer it, you heat it, you hammer it, and then you shape it and mold it into what you need for life. Is it a tool? Is it a blade? What is it? And then you put that in the life's quenching water, which can either make or break you, and you test it and you test it and you go back to the forge and you rebuild because that's the lesson that I'm trying to really teach everybody is you are not set the way you are now. You can grow. You can do something with what you have and mold it into something better. And I think that's what God intended.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. That's a really, really great point. That sometimes I don't think we realize, right? One of the things I like to talk about when I talk about the reality of who He is as a creator, right? Because I'm so unapologetic about talking about Him. Because guess what? He was my helper all along the way of developing the things that I developed. And one of the things that became very important for me to realize, and that I think sometimes we don't necessarily realize, is that He is proactive, right? He is the best planner that there is, right? There. I mean, come on, he knows the end from the beginning. Come on, he's the best planner that there is. So with Him being so proactive, He knows exactly what it's going to take for us to accomplish whatever it is that we need to accomplish. So we come here already with that in us, and sometimes we are trained to look elsewhere, right? There's one place where the Messiah Christ is talking to the disciples, and He says, "The kingdom is not meat and drink and all these other things you think it is." He says, "But the kingdom is within you: righteousness, peace, joy, and the Holy Spirit." So He talks in the reality about what is there already, what has been posited there. I think about the story of Jeremiah. He's one of the prophets, and Jeremiah says, "Hey, I'm just a child. I can't." He says, "No, no, 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 no. I don't want you to be confused. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you and ordained you to be a prophet to the nations." Like, you already have in you what is necessary and essential. I just need you to be able to work with me to find it. And so that's a wonderful thing, to really think about, right? Because if you think about it, just kind of thinking about your theme here, we're talking about forging something, right? The reality is the raw material is already there, right? Before it becomes a sword or whatever it's going to be forged into, shaped and molded into, or it becomes that, it's already, the necessary material is already there, that's available to make it, to have it to become shaped. It just needs to be molded. It just needs to be developed. It just needs a little steady hand, and some fire and all that kind of stuff like that to get it to that point. And so whenever we're talking about um, forging manhood and thinking about values, and I love how you said that your coach pushed you, he prodded you to say, I want you to go back and think about that again. Because perhaps one of the reasons why you're not necessarily moving in the direction that you really want to move is because there's something here that you don't see. Like you don't see the raw material that's there. You don't see what's already there within you that's of worth, that is of value, right? That only through the forging can only increase in its value and become more of what it already is and become usable, right? For a specific function and a specific purpose. And so, thinking about that, uh, tell us a little bit about um, the a little bit more of depth about what does forging manhood mean to you? What does it really mean to you?
Yeah, so forging manhood to me really means getting a grasp on who you are as an individual, what you know, your experiences, and what you can pass on, right? So a man in my eyes is somebody who teaches, who leads, who gives value to his children in experience and knowledge. And so for me, if a man decides to just stay put at whatever it is that they're doing and never grow or learn, well, what are they going to pass on in that sense? So to me, men are always in progress. There is no finish line. That's the kicker here. We are always learning. We are always growing and developing. And in that sense, like you said, in the scriptures have said, God knew you before you were, even in the womb. You were ordained to do something and you're supposed to go out and do it. And that's the purpose that we all feel drawn to. And so in that sense, you are always supposed to be gaining knowledge, walking the path, and getting like a snowball, growing and growing and growing until you can pass on that knowledge to the next line. Your kin, or you're a mentor and to your mentee, and be that person for somebody, because you never know what someone's going through. I mean, I struggled in my early years to see or to feel the presence of God because I was too wrapped up in my own feelings and my own self-doubt. And so, I there's this story that I tell about how I was majorly depressed. I mean, I was going down a dark path. I was and my in that moment, I reached out to a few people to kind of see, because I didn't want to end it. I didn't want to know that to do that. I know that now, but in the moment, I was hurt. I was down. I was not feeling it, and I reached out. And this is God's hand at work. And it's crazy to me to look back at this and think that there was somebody who's touching my life in that way, because I reached out to those that I thought would answer the phone when I was alone by myself. My mother, my grandmother, my friends, my brothers. I reached out to anybody and everybody that I thought would answer the phone. And then my last stitch effort was to reach out to somebody. And I said, if they answer the phone, then I know I'm not supposed to do this. And it's crazy because this person is my best friend. He was at war. He was in Azerbaijan fighting the Iraqi war. And I called him knowing he wasn't going to answer. I knew that he wasn't going to answer, except he did. The funny thing about this situation is I called him. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I called him and he answered the phone. He said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I broke down because I didn't know what else to do. And he told me later that his tour had just ended and they had sent him home because he was almost blown up in a raid that happened on their base. And so they sent him home for a psych evaluation. Well, he had gotten home that previous morning. So it was a crazy lineup that I was like, I got to look into this. So I started doing research. I started developing myself, learning more about God and how God's presence actually fits into your life. And it's always there. You are ordained before you ever touch the womb, and your path is righteous, and you should continue to grow, continue to do the right thing. And that's man in progress. You are forging yourself
Mhm,
day in and day out. You could be forging the right material or the wrong material. You have to figure it out.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's an important thing, right? Um, and I love how you keep emphasizing that it starts with seeing it. Like you gotta, because I think I don't know. Somehow I think society, life, somehow another, you know, can sometimes train us to be in such a negative headspace because of where we are, right? None of us are in control of our starting point, like what that looks like. None of us are there. Right? Some of us probably, if we could go back and change it, we probably would. Um, but then some of us who have the insight know that everything that was beforehand up until this point has really made me who I am. So thereunto, I probably would not change any of it, right? Because it's made me, the reality of who I am now. And I think sometimes, though, in our society, especially not well, let me not say especially, but I think in our society, it definitely is problematic that sometimes we are trying to figure out how to measure up to a standard that is a fallacy, right? Um, it is, not even Superman was always in a cape, you know. Sometimes he was in glasses, at the newspaper being Clark Kent, right? And even the reality of Superman, him being Superman, he still had kryptonite, right? So he wasn't totally invincible, right? Just a side note, I think probably one of the most disappointing movies I think I ever watched in my lifetime was the Batman versus Superman movie. I just thought how ridiculous, that this is a rich guy with a bunch of gadgets, could actually beat and defeat, the Superman, right? But when you think about the fact that he got the whole kryptonite situation down, and the whole monster that, without the kryptonite and all that, anyway, I was so disappointed in that movie. I was like, there's no way. Anyway, the reality is that sometimes what puts us in that negative headspace that causes us not to see what is there, right? Because you got to be able to see the good that's there, right? Because life situations, things that people say to you, things that people have said about you, and probably most powerful, things that you say about yourself, things you think about yourself, really cause you to be in a negative headspace where you don't even see because you're looking at a something that is supposed to be a standard for manhood, and then you're trying to measure up and you're trying to figure out. I know they talk about it a lot of times on the women's side when it comes to like supermodels and all those kind of different things like that and beauty standards and all of that, but it does not escape the same reality for manhood when it comes to manhood. And sometimes we are looking at the superficial societal and I'm gonna put it in quotations, norms as to what the expectation of being a man, developing and forging into manhood is. And it's almost like there's no um, there's for development, right? Either just be a man. Like how many times do we hear that? Just be a man. Just be a man. But the reality is that how many of us have grown up and somebody is telling me to do something that I don't know how to do. One of my favorite things is um, in my secular vocation, I've been have a background in training, right, and teaching. And one of the things I know about training and teaching is a combination of articulation, right, as well as demonstration. So I demonstrate what I articulate because now this is a whole well-rounded lesson, right? I don't believe in the old adage that should be tossed out of do what I say and not as I do. I do believe in being an example, right, and showing what that looks like. So talk to me about that difference, the difference between uh, being a man who is in progress and that being okay. Oh my gosh, that being okay to be a man who's in progress versus trying to live up to this superficial societal idea of manhood.
Yeah, so I produced an episode about the mask that we carry, and it is exemplifying that exactly. We grow up with fathers and men around us who told in my generation, they told us that emotions were not for men, that you were supposed to just grab the shovel and dig the hole regardless of how you felt or what you were doing in that moment. And for me, that mask was kind of a big deal because everyone wore one. My father wore one, my stepfather wore one, my grandfather wore one. Everyone wore a mask that when it was finally removed, you actually finally saw the honest person sitting in front of you instead of the person acting or portraying a certain thing. And that toughness that people portray, these masks get really, really heavy, and some of us, most of us, can't carry them forever. And so living up to societal's mask, is not something that you should strive to do. You should strive to figure out who you are as a man. What makes you a man in this world today is you. And you have the right to figure out what that means for you. Like, I don't have to be a construction worker to be a man. I don't have to sell you stocks and bonds to be a man. I can teach you how to build values, and that's me being a man. I can teach you about God, and that's you being a man, right? That you set that pace. My thing is that there are a couple things that men need to be able to do, and that's it. One is they need to be able to teach. Fathers need to be able to teach. It's just a prerequisite to even being a father. If you can't teach, if you can't demonstrate, then figure out how. You're not lost, you're not broken. You figure out how. And when you get that perspective on how to teach, you start to lead. And when you become a leader, the game changes. And now you start realizing that when you lead with kindness, when you lead with love, things start to line up in a better way. So for me, being a man in progress is really understanding that growth
Yeah.
and trajectory are important in everyone's life. And living up to societal norms on the other side is just you wearing a mask that you can't continue to wear your whole life. And that, for me, is the difference between the two.
hmm hmm Yeah, that's so good because I'm thinking about what you're saying, and one of the things that comes to mind is how um, a sense of vulnerability as it relates to manhood is has always been considered, or weakness for the longest time. Like, to be vulnerable is to be weak, right? But then I'm thinking, that's just not the reality of how it goes. To be vulnerable is to be human, right? Me being a man does not exclude me from the human experience. And a lot of times, you know, we understand the difference between, as far as like men and women and how that works on the emotional side and different things like that. But just because I am not emotional does not mean I don't have emotions, right? Me having emotions makes me human. It's a part of my drive. It's a part of my motivation. It's a part of it's a part of my why, right? Um, And the truth of the matter is, when that happens and we get this wrong idea, then what we start to do is we start to develop a persona, around what is an expectation of us. And then we start to uh, create a character, a character, caricature. And we present this caricature to everybody. And now it's just brute force and tough and strong and headlong, and I don't recognize when I'm weak, and I don't recognize when I'm tired, and I don't recognize when I'm when I need some help, when I need to slow down, when I need to stop. And what happens is we actually waste all of that good that is right there deep within us, that is available, if we would just take the moment to take our eyes off of this incorrect, lofty expectation. Find, as you say, our values. I think I hear sometimes people use the word that I gotta center myself, right? I find that value system that governs and guides me, because if this is my value system, this is something that is never going to change. It's not going to be flexible, based on whatever's happening. It's like, no, my values become my standard, right? And this is my standard, and this is like how I live my life. This is how I choose to live my life, right? And this is what I know is best, that works for me as a man. There's no cookie cutter, uh, robotic, if you would. I like to say that we've not been designed to fit in. We've been designed to fit together, right? That's why we're different. That's why there's that multitude of different things. And one of the things that I find very important is um, understanding that struggle is a part of this. I mean, the that's another one of those lofty things, right? Perfection is a myth when it comes to the reality of our existence, right? Perfection only exists in one place. It does not exist within the reality of, now, the goal to move toward perfection, right? Or to get to that point. Of course, that's what we strive for. That's what we look for. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to become. All the things, right? But we know that that is not a reality. And sometimes it has been so valuable. I even noticed this. I was with another guest about this. I find that the value in times with my children, it created, it creates a different type of connection, right? When I'm able to talk about, all right, listen, I'm your dad, you know, but I'm not Superman. I'm not perfect, right? I'm not flawless. It means that sometimes, and I can't, I'll never forget the look on my children's face when I said this to them. I said, sometimes I'm wrong. No, sometimes I'm wrong, right? And I, just like anybody else, have to work through figuring that out. And so I made a commitment to them. I said, if I figure out and recognize that even in dealing with you guys, that was approach to something I did, that maybe it was the wrong idea, the wrong thought process, whatever, the wrong approach, the wrong response, what have you. I said, and I'm making the commitment to you guys that I'll come back and I'll correct that. Well, it built a different type of a connection between us, right? Because now everybody can relate to being imperfect, right? And so I love to hear from you, to talk to me a little bit more about, I mean, when you handle that, when you're moving through that process, and there's, you know, starts and stops, and and perhaps somebody's in that space where they're trying to jump start this thing. They've started a couple times. They're feeling discouraged. They don't know, really how to just jump back in there. and they're going through all the different things in their mind, and the condemnation and the guilt and the shame and all that kind of stuff like that. You kind of talk to us about how to like really work through that process,
Yeah.
and give yourself the grace to grow.
Yeah, so it's part of the process. Shame is part of the forge, right? Now it's not meant to hold you down. It's there to help you see your values. When you feel shame, when you feel the guilt after doing something, it's because what you did didn't really align with your core values. And so that's when you feel that the heaviest. So my process is journaling. If you don't journal, I mean you should. You really should. When you start to realize that you need help and guidance, you can't remember everything that you've learned. And so it's important to write it down. So I talk about journaling in the forge, and being that it's important when a blacksmith is making their tools and stuff like that, they will write down, how much metal is needed, how many hammer swings was needed. They'll write it down because they're trying to create a system that works for them. And that's important. You need to create a system that works for you. So when you're in the forge and you make a mistake, you find a crack in your value, you patch it up with whatever it needs. Like if you're looking at honesty, well, there's types of honesty that people don't realize that are not meant for that are not meant for honest values. Like I call it cruel honesty. When people just say something and it's mean-spirited, but they're being factual, they're just not doing it in a kind way. I call that cruel honesty. And cruel honesty is not really a good forged value. Kind honesty is. If somebody's messing up and you go to them and say, "Hey, I noticed XYZ. I would like to help you because I've been down that road." But if someone comes up to you and just says, "Hey, you're doing it wrong," that's really not that's really not helpful. And we need to help each other. We need to find a community that can build ourselves up. And that's another thing I'm trying to create too, is that community. We need each other. Men need men just as much as children need parents. We need that community. We need to be able to rely on each other and be honest with each other and let each other know that we're struggling so that we can help each other out. And so for me, that's kind of where, you know, I wanted to create something in that realm, because I know the struggle that I faced trying to handle my own, depression alone when I was younger. And even today, whenever I have issues, I rely on friends and family members just as much as they rely on me. And it's important to keep building. It's important to keep honoring yourself in that way, honoring the system in that way, because realistically, you're going to find that you do things that you regret, and you may feel shame and you may feel guilt. And that's okay. You don't stop there. You continue going, right? Edison, I believe, said it himself. He found 1,000 ways not to create a light bulb, but he found the one way that worked, right? And that's kind of how it works. You have to find the 1,000 ways not to do something so that you can discover the one way that it works. And you're going to find that during the process of building values, you're going to be tested. God is going to test you. I know this firsthand. I I told my wife I need more patience. I need to be more patient with my children, with my job, with my customers, with all of my clients. I need to be patient. And it was funny to me because I kept getting put in positions where I needed to have that patience because something took place that was out of my control, that was out of the people's control. And I remember one day I was traveling for work and I was on my way back, and I stopped at this Wendy's for some food. And there was this older gentleman next to me and we start ordering our food, and the lady comes out and says, "I'm so sorry, the grill shut down." And we're getting started back up and this and that. And this guy in front of me was super upset, and he demanded his money back and walked out. But me and this older gentleman, we're just sitting there, and I looked at him and I just said, you know, I asked for patience, and God keeps putting me in these positions. And it's so true though, because that's what God does. When you ask, right? God's not just going to say, "Okay, now you're patient." God's going to say, "Hey, here are moments where you need to
Mhm.
be patient. You can test yourself." And that's the quench. That's what I call the quench in the Man in Progress podcast.
Wow, it's true. It's absolutely true. I 100% know that to be the case, right? It's a part of our development, right? It's the trying. It's what James calls the faith that works patient. It's one of those things, you know. It's essential that we walk through things. I mean, one of the times I was doing a message and a talk, and I made the statement, I am like you. I wish that some of the things that when it comes to going through stuff, I wish that God would just put it all on a buffet line and we could look through and say, okay, I'll take a little of that, a little of that, a little of that, a little of that, and you can keep the rest of that, right? Like we do at the buffet anyway. We take what we want, and the rest of it that's good for somebody else, but that's just not for me, right? But it's not like that. And in a funny way, there's a scripture passage comes to mind, Romans 8:28 says, "We know that all things work together for the good of them who love God, called according to His purpose." Somehow, He has a way of causing this formula to work out for good. So, as down, it's been so much fun, great conversation. I want to try to make a reference point over to your Man in Progress podcast, as you definitely can find that. If you would, those of you who are in the listening audience, I want you to take a look over there and look at the Man in Progress podcast. I clicked over there. I went over to the page. I saw some of the things that were there along the lines of like the blogs, all these things that were available. And so I really encourage you to go over and look at the Man in Progress podcast, Forging Manhood with Travis Murray. Okay, you need to look that up. Tell us a little bit more about where we can find some of your materials, some of your social medias, and all that kind of different things like that, and how we can learn more about what you do.
Yeah, of course. So you can go to my website. It's travismurrayvo.com. From there, you can access my podcast. You can access my social media from there, which I'm on TikTok, not heavily, but I'm building a presence on YouTube right now. So you can go check me out over there. Just look up Travis Murray on YouTube or Man in Progress, Forging Manhood on YouTube, and it'll pull up there. And I'll have some other videos where I talk about some other aspects of being a man and learning and growing from there. I talk about building confidence and whatnot on that channel too, because I think all of these things are important. And I'll be continuing to put out videos about values that people want and or what desire to have. And so I'll be putting out reference material for people to look up from there. And if you want a little extra help, you can visit my website, go to the coaching tab, and we can set down a little 15-minute talk and see if my coaching would benefit you or anyone that you know.
Beautiful, beautiful. So here's the thing. One of the reasons why we got in this space, I know one of the reasons why I got in this space was because there was some things that, again, the experience that I had in my life, I felt like it could be beneficial, helpful to someone else with the things that I learned, and just wanted to have a way to share these things that I learned to just help in the space, because I wish I would have had it, or I wish I would have known where it was at the time that I was coming along. So I wanted to be to someone else what I didn't feel like I had at the time. And then, as I started to dig into it and I started to find some alarming things, like who knew that just in the United States alone, 25 million children are growing up without their fathers. And that's just United States. And that was, I think, like couple years back, earlier statistic. One of the things that got me was like how in the list of even like holidays that are celebrated, Father's Day ranked below Arbor Day. I think I kind of try to bring that out. That's just like So people have more affection or more connection to trees than they do fathers in fatherhood. It's just alarming. And so there's so much in this space, and there's always more that can be provided. There's always space and room for everybody. And so we want to make sure that we highlight the resources that are there that are available. You know, and like I said, one of the most valuable things in my development as a father was me learning how my development as a man, period, you know. And I would have these moments where I would go out of town and say, look, I'm going to this conference. And when I go to this conference, I'm going laying all of my responsibilities down. I'm going to this conference not as anybody's husband, not as anybody's father, not as anybody's son, not as anybody's brother or nephew or grand, none of that. I'm just going to this conference as a man who is trying to get what he needs to make himself better. And that made all the difference in the world for me, you know, to give myself the space to develop. So, Travis, we appreciate what you do. Thankful that you're in this space, providing these things, making these things available. So please take that information, share with someone else that you know, to give them the opportunity to be a part of what Travis and others like him have going on. So I'm thankful for this conversation. Thankful for this time. Again, we encourage you guys to subscribe, like and share all the things. Do the same thing for Travis over there. Subscribe, like, and share. Go to the platforms, get the material, get the education, get the development, get into that forge, right? Get into that space where iron is sharpening iron. Because the better you are as a person, as a man, the better you will be as a father, as a husband, and all the other hats that you wear and all the other things that you do. We appreciate you, right? We appreciate you, right? Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for being a father. Thank you for being a man. Thank you for being a husband. Thank you for sticking in there. Be encouraged, be strengthened, be built up, right? That's what the whole goal is in our conversation together. So I'm hoping that you got some good takeaways from this particular discussion that you're going to utilize for your own benefit. Travis, before we leave, man, can you just give us a parting word? If there's something specific you would want someone in particular, out of all the things you said, to take away from this conversation, what would that be?
Yeah, and honestly, amen to everything you just said. It's really touching in the way that you bring it up, and it's heartfelt. But I'll leave you with the thing that I always say to end my episode, which is just, you know, you're not behind. You're not broken. You are a man in progress. Keep forging.
Wow. I love it. What a great message. You're not broken. You're a man in progress, right? You're that good man doing the best you can and working to make your best better. All right. Thank you guys for joining us and being a part of our conversation today. Travis, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me, man. This has been fruitful and productive. I've enjoyed myself. Looking forward to seeing more and more and more of the great things that are going to be happening as it relates to this particular space with fatherhood and manhood and all the things. Looking forward to seeing more men be forged in the fire to become all that they can potentially be. All right, guys, thank you again for joining us on the Facts and Fatherhood podcast. And you know, we're going to see you the next time.